Hello everyone, Max here with Fiction Rant to bring you part 2 of my Empire vs. Goa'uld matchup. That is, the Imperial Empire from Star Wars just prior to the Battle of Endor versus the Goa'uld from Stargate just prior to the defeat of Ra. This section will cover the speed and other mobility elements of each side. Also have a coffee link in the description and should have some merch available soon, so stay tuned for that. As I mentioned in the intro, there's one bit of world building that I'll be imposing upon this matchup. That is, there will be Stargates everywhere there are people, not just in the Milky Way. To get around the inherent continuity issues that this causes for Star Wars, let's just assume that all the gates in the galaxy have been buried and are only now being rediscovered and researched. Stargates themselves are amazing pieces of tech, which allow ultra-rapid traversal of the universe, but only for sufficiently small objects like people and small vehicles. Each gate is self-powered and works basically like a rotary dial phone, via either their DHD or dial home device, where instead of making a call, you input 7 symbols to give you a location in 3D space plus a point of origin, and that connects a pair of Stargates with a wormhole which can be traversed in seconds, no matter the distance. For intergalactic travel, just add an 8th symbol and a ton more power and you're golden. Stargates are self-powered and quite resilient, while providing troops and material free access to wherever the users happen to have address information, so controlling them is highly important. Controlling them can be done in a few ways. It can be done by just destroying the gate, which causes a planet-ending level of explosion. They're made of naquadah, which can supercharge. It's a power source. It can supercharge nukes, that kind of thing. So blowing up a whole gate is a lot of energy being released. You can just guard them by pointing guns at them and such. Or, if you're feeling more sophisticated, you can install a iris device over the aperture, which doesn't allow anything to materialize. Basically, you stick a barrier, like a micron, in front of the event horizon of the wormhole, and then anything trying to pass through can't materialize fully, and they just pancake. Burying the gates also does essentially the same thing as the iris, except that you can go through, there's just only dirt on the other side, but you can also just pick the whole gate up and stick it somewhere else, like in space or on another planet. There's a lot more to go into regarding Stargates, but I think this pretty much covers the important bits. In any case, both sides get access to the whole network for this matchup, though they'll be limited by known addresses. Sticking with the Stargate side for now, on the army end of things, the Goa'uld are a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, they don't really employ armored vehicles at all, so there's a lot of dudes just walking everywhere. That said, they make use of fighters, bombers, and transports, those being the Death Gliders, Alkesh bombers, and Teltac freighter/troop transports. The Teltac in particular, along with all Goa'uld capital ships, have transport rings, which operate like site-to-site transporters, removing the need to actually land troops most of the time, though there are only so many that can be transported at a time. So if you want to deploy thousands and thousands of troops, you either need a lot of transport rings or just land and then have them walk out of the hangar bay. Of the flyers, the Alkesh bombers and Teltac transports have their own hyperdrives, and all Goa'uld hyperdrives can operate at about 32,000 times the speed of light, although there are exceptions such as Apophysis' mothership, which could go much faster. It's important to note, however, that while 32,000 times the speed of light seems quick, space is really big, as is Goa'uld territory, so when possible and practical, the system lords prefer to use the Stargates to get around. At sublight, the speeds of all Goa'uld ships are pretty nebulous, though the wiki claims that Death Gliders can do 12,000 kph. That's Mach 9.72 for a bit of perspective. About triple as fast as the listed speed for the SR-71 Blackbird. Presumably this is a listed speed for in-atmosphere, though we never get to see them moving anywhere close to that fast. We do, however, get to see the X-301 prototype leaving Earth's atmosphere at approximately 1,000,000 miles per hour, so yeah, the numbers just get insane. In space, presumably their sublight velocity is uncapped because that's how space works. Alkesh bombers are relatively sluggish, but Teltac transports are surprisingly nimble, and Hatak motherships are noted to be surprisingly quick and nimble despite their size, though the only actual figure I can find is that they can achieve 5% of light speed fairly quickly, thanks in part to their inertial dampers. Basically, all the sublight engines, you're not actually using an engine, it's a modified inertial damper that it's an inertia drive. They use the inertia drive itself and dampers themselves to provide thrust, which means that their acceleration is probably uncapped depending on the amount of power they can pump into it. Moving on to the Star Wars side of things, unlike the Goa'uld, the Empire makes wide use of a variety of vehicles for the ground, from the humble speeder bike all the way up to the gigantic AT-AT walkers. They also make wide use of airborne transports, though in their case they have to actually make use of landing craft, since they don't have a transporter equivalent. I won't dwell too much on the ground-based speed specifics, since having a vehicle is almost always faster than just not having one, and getting boots on the ground via transporter is always faster than using a transport. As for the sublight capabilities of the flyers, I'm not going to get into every type of ship available since we'd be here all day. Instead, I'll pick equivalents of the 4 types of ships I talked about on the Goa'uld side. That will be the Imperial 2 Star Destroyer, the TIE Fighter, TIE Bomber, and the Lambda-class Imperial Shuttle. Annoyingly, the speeds of all these ships are listed in megalights, which really only serve as a ratio of speed for the purposes of the FX department. So a 80 megalight ship can move twice as fast as a 40 megalight ship, which is helpful, but not that helpful. So yeah, a Imperial 2 can move at 60 megalight, but is limited to 975 kph in atmosphere, which is still a bit under the sound barrier, for which I'm sure everyone oppressed by the Empire is eternally grateful. They're like 1,600 meters long, and something like that breaking the sound barrier would probably rend Earth. It would be really bad. I'll circle back to the megalite thing in a bit, but I'll give you the raw numbers I can find first. TIE fighters can do 100 megalite and 1200 kph in atmosphere. Bombers can do 60 megalite and 850 in atmosphere, and the Lambda-class shuttles can do 54 megalite and 850 kph in atmosphere. So now we get to try to make sense of megalites. As mentioned before, top speed in space is nearly meaningless unless you're approaching light speed. What matters is acceleration. Without inertial dampers, you're limited to less than 10 g, but fortunately, both sides in this case have them, so nothing will be that simple. Of everything we're talking about, the TIE Fighter actually has a figure of 4100 g, or 20 megalights per second, for acceleration capability. The TIE Bomber has 2380 g with no listed megalite rating, and that's all we've got. There's other figures attached to other ships, but let's keep the discussion relatively narrow for now. Also, these figures are clearly absurd since we never see anything pull anywhere close to that kind of acceleration, even if it would have been really, really useful or cool, but whatever. Big numbers are cool. So let's do some math. If we just convert using 4100 g equals 20 megalite, that means that 1 megalite is 205 meters per second, making the top speed of TIE fighters a whopping 73,800 kph in space, which is quick, but kind of meaningless in space, and in that environment they're actually pretty sluggish. Space is awful big after all. I mean, the Apollo rockets going to the moon were doing about 39,000 kph, so double that is pretty quick, but it's not that quick. This means that TIE fighters are actually way slower than death gliders in atmosphere, and presumably in space as well, since if they can move that fast in atmosphere, they can definitely move far faster in space, the death gliders that is. I won't dwell on the fighters, bombers, and capital ships much since they should basically scale accordingly. In short, from what I can dig up, Goa'uld ships are a lot faster than Imperial ships in atmosphere and presumably in space as well, at least at sublight. As for faster than light travel, the Imperials have a bit of a mixed bag here. On the one hand, their hyperdrives are crazy fast. If you've watched the channel before, you know that I've done multiple explorations where I approximate the actual speed of Star Wars hyperdrives, since they can traverse their galaxy in a matter of days to weeks, and not years. Unlike the Goa'uld, the Empire hasn't been using Stargates for thousands of years, so crossing their territory in a matter of days instead of weeks or years is pretty important. Suffice to say, Star Wars hyperdrives operate at millions of times the speed of light. Far faster than Goa'uld hyperdrives, though it's an interesting note that in the Stargate series, eventually we get human ships powered by Asgard hyperdrives, augmented by ZPM modules, which use zero-point energy, which can move between galaxies in a matter of days, way faster than either Imperial or Goa'uld hyperdrives. But the Goa'uld don't have those. The main drawback of Imperial hyperdrives is that they are highly limited because of hazards inherent in their design and use. Technically, they can be used just about anywhere, but they have integrated safeties that force users to not be in hyperspace too close to a gravity well, which is why interdictor cruisers can actually work. And the danger of ramming stuff is so great that everyone uses hyperspace lanes where things are relatively clear and safe. This is why blockades can work. The departure point from any given system is pretty much set. Like there's this window and that's all you have to actually guard. You can disable the safeties, but doing so is a great way to just die. So most of the time nobody does so. even if it would provide a tactical advantage. It's also relatively difficult to actually disable the safeties. So yeah, Imperial hyperdrive is much faster than Goa'uld, but it's simultaneously a bit more clunky to use. Goa'uld hyperdrive is much more like warp drive from Star Trek, where it's just pick a direction and go, at least as far as I can dig up. And with that, I think we'll wrap this section up. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, or if there's anything important to add, and also how you think this will affect the matchup. Again, I have a coffee link in the description, and soon should have some merch available, and until next time, live long and prosper, and may the Force be with you.